Unit 11 group quiz. Number 1, the value 25C2 or 25 combination 2 is equivalent to what? Who thinks they know what's the best way to solve this one?
Maybe do the factorial?
Yeah, I think work it out. Exactly. We'll kind of work it out. For instance, we know what that means is if I were to write it out with the factorials, it would be 25 factorial, and then on the bottom is what? 23 and 2. So then I go through here. Remember with the p's, we do how this tells us how many blanks, and that's the number we start with. So this would end up being 25 times 24.
Yeah.
Well, we could work this out and see what ends up happening, but let's see if we can make any of them to look like this before I actually start multiplying things. Okay, this one is a C. So on this one, I'm just going to put a little arrow here. What's going to be on the top?
25.
25. And then on the bottom will be
2.
23 and
2.
2. Look. Does it matter if I had written the 2 first and then the 23? No. So do you see how these match?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's my answer.
You're so smart. You're so smart.
All right. Okay, number 2. This one's a toughie.
7.
The answer is 7.
Can I tell you how?
Tell me how.
Because you always start off with C, 1, C, 0.
You always start with 0. Yeah, your 6C0. So there's always your 0 term, okay? And so that means that there ends up being 7. If you're doing your makeup right now, please stop. Okay, number 3.
Makeup.
State the first and last term of this binomial expansion. Okay, how many blanks would I have on this one? How many terms? 4. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now you can do this a different way than me. I just like to do what I can, okay? What numbers, because let me tell you that on this test, a lot of people mess up by forgetting to put the numbers from Pascal's triangle in front. Very good. 1, 3, 3, 1 on this one is correct. 1, 3, 3, 1. But we are only looking at which 2 terms?
The first and last.
The first one and the last one. Okay, on the first one, I'm going to have what?
4x.
4x to the third. Okay, when we start the last one, it's going to be what?
Y.
Negative y to the third. Don't forget about your negative signs.
I was looking at
Okay,
my phone.
so. Yeah. Is Mrs. Alta? He is not here. Yes, you're welcome. Bye. Okay, so 4 to the third power is what? 64, and then it's also x to the third. And when we multiply that by 1, it doesn't change. And then my other term, we have a negative to the third power, which will make a negative, and then we also have
3.
y to the third. And then when you multiply that by 1, it doesn't change. So that's my answer for my first and last term. Questions? Yes?
On the test, can we move it like 4 to the third, or we have to work it out?
You need to work it out. But it's going to be multiple choice. So if you pick the one that has like 4 and then x to the third, that's wrong because the 4 is to the third as well. Okay? Okay, number 4. What's the complete expansion? How many terms will this have? 4. If you have a cell phone out right now, please put it away. Okay, 4 terms. What are the numbers that go? 1, 3, 3, 1. Okay? My first part of this is a, so we're going to have a, and it's going to be to what power? To the third. And then a to the second, and then a to the first, and then a to the 0 we don't put. Okay? My second term, starting back here, is going to be what? B to the third to the third. And then we have b to the third to the second, and then b to the third to the first, and then we don't write our 0. And then we need to simplify. So here we have a to the third times 1, which is just a to the third. There's plus signs in between each of these, and we don't have to worry about any negatives. So I have plus. Here I have 3 a squared, and then b to the third of the first. Powers to powers we multiply, but 3 times 1 is just still 3. Plus, we have 3. A to the first is just a, and then this will be b to the 6th. And then plus, what's it going to be? B to the 9th. Okay, number 5, what's the complete expansion? How many terms will I have on number 5? 5, because it's always one more than the exponent. Good. What numbers will go in front here? Very good. Always start by doing that so you don't forget it, okay? Like I said, that's where people usually mess up. Okay, so starting here, this is going to be x to what?
4.
And then we have x to the...
3, 2, 4.
And then starting backwards, what am I going to write?
Y 4.
Very good.
1, 2,
Oops, let's just put that. Okay. So my first term is going to end up being what?
1 and 4.
Very good. On my next one, when I have a negative to the first power, that makes a negative. And so we'll have negative 4. Good. Okay, don't forget that this negative comes to the front because some of you like to still write the negative in the middle somehow. So make sure you take care of that negative and bring it to the front. Okay, because it's like a negative 1. It's like a number. Okay, so when we go here and we have a negative to the second power, it's going to make a positive. And we will have 6x to the second, y to the second. Here we have a negative to the third power, which is going to make a...
Negative.
Thank you. And we get 4x y to the third. And the last one, a negative to the fourth power, will make a positive, and then that's y to the fourth. Any questions?
And the reason why is because you can always tell if it's even exponent or odd.
That's right. If you have an even exponent, a negative will end up becoming a positive. If you have an odd exponent, your negative will end up becoming a negative. Okay. Number 6, identify the sum of the exponents of the fifth term of this problem. What will the exponents add to be? 7. Does that make sense? Questions? Okay. What are the first 2 terms of this expansion? Okay, so we're going to write the first 2 terms. In the first, with the 6th power, what are my numbers that go in front of each of those?
X to the 6 and X to the 5th.
1 and 6. Okay, 1 and 6.
I was thinking about the exponent.
Okay, so then I start with my x. This one is going to be x to what power?
6.
And then the next one will be x to the
5th.
5th. This one, when we end up doing the y's, this one is 0, right?
Yes.
And then this would be 2y to the first. The other way that we can think about it is that our exponents need to add to be 6. This one's already adding to be 6. This one needs one more to make it add to 6. Right? Okay. So then that means my first term is just x to the 6th. And then the second term is going to end up being good because I have 6 and then I have 2 to the first, which makes 2, and 6 times 2 is 12. And then we get x to the 5th y. Questions there? No? All right. Number 8, it says, what is the fourth term of this expansion? So we could go out to 4 terms. 1, 2, 3, 4. If you go to Pascal's triangle, what are the numbers, the first 4 numbers on the 11th row? 1, 11, 55, 165? Is that what you said? Does everybody agree?
Sorry, I was just looking.
Okay. So then, if you started with your x's, this would be x to the 11, x to the 10, x to the 9, and this is x to the 8. So this is the one we're looking at right here. If that is x to the 8th, then this will have to be y to the what? 3rd. And how do we know that? They have to add to the 11, exactly. And there's no other numbers there, so the complete fourth term is just 165 x to the 8th, y to the 3rd. Questions on number 8? Okay, number 9, it wants a 5th term. So let's go ahead and write out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What would be my numbers for the first 5 there?
1, 6, 15.
Okay, 1, 6, 15, 20. And then this one is 15. Okay. So if you want to, we can start this way. This would end up being x to the
6.
and then we have x to the 2nd, which means that 5y is going to be to the 4th. And why is it 4? Exponents have to add to be 6. So we end up with number-wise, I have 15 times, and what is 5 to the 4th power? 625 is correct. And then 15 times 625 is 9,375 is correct. And then we're going to have x to the 2nd and y to the 4th. Okay, number 10, what's the coefficient of the 8th term of this expansion?
You could go backwards.
We could. Or even, we know that it's going to be
Coefficient.
11c. Anybody know?
Oh, it's whatever's on the back.
7.
Oh, because there's 9 terms.
Because there are 12. But could you have just gone out and written like 8 things first if you wanted to?
Yeah.
Yeah? Whatever way makes sense to you, do it that way. If you have your Pascal's triangle, you guys kind of lucked out in that this one, it goes up to number 12. And so if you get out your Pascal's triangle, they said the 8th term, right?
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it's 330, right?
Why is it 7?
Good question. Anybody know why it's 7 here and not 8?
Because it starts 0.
Starts with 0, and so when you count out 8, you're counting 0 first, so it only goes to 7 on your combination. Okay, so the number is 330, and then this is going to be x to some power, and then we're going to have negative y to some power. So I don't know, maybe there's an easy way to you. If you're not sure, I might count out. Yeah.
Wouldn't the y be 7 is the,
Yes.
the negative?
This number always matches this exponent. So this would be a 7, and that means this one would be a 4. The reason why these are important is because we need to figure out, is this going to be negative or positive? And in this case, it's going to end up being negative. And they just want the coefficient, which means they just want the number, so it's going to end up being negative 330. If you didn't know this, you could always count out and be like, okay, this is going to be 11, like, you know, x to the 11th, 10th, 9th, 8th, 7th, 6th, 5, 4. Does that make sense? Or you could write it all out too. Okay, moving on. Okay. Identify the coefficient of the term which contains x to the 4th in this expansion. So if you want to, we could write this out. I know there's going to be 7 blanks because it's always 1 more than my exponent. What would be my numbers here for the 6th row?
1, 6, 15,
Again, I would always write those out first if you can. And then we can start here and we get x to the 6th. This is x to the 5th. And then I have x to the 4th. So I'm going to stop here because this is the one I'm looking at, right? And if that's x to the 4th, then my negative y is going to be to the 2nd because why? Exactly, it has to add to be 6. So since this negative is to an even power, is my answer going to be positive or negative? Positive. And they're only wanting the coefficient, and so the number in front is going to end up being 15 because there's no other numbers in the problem. Number 12, identify the second term of this expansion. So we have 1, 2 terms. The numbers here would be 1 and then 5. Did you have a question?
Is it 3x plus, is it 3x to the 4, y to, is it 3x to the 4? 3x
Okay,
to the 4
so we're gonna, this would
y.
be 3x to the 5th, which means this is gonna be 3x to the 4th. And then we're gonna end up having y to what power? And again, how do I know that? It's good, the exponents have to add to be 5. So now we have to deal with these numbers though. 3 to the 4th power is what? 81 is correct. And then we do 5 times 81, which is 405. So we end up with 405, x to the 4th, and then y. Okay, 13. If the variance of a set of data is 64, what is the standard deviation? How do you find the standard deviation? It's the square root of the variance. So square root of 64 is what?
8.
8. "14. Many trains passed through Fresno yesterday. A representative from the city counted the cars from each train. She reported 65 as the mean and 6 as the standard deviation. So I might just go down and write mean right now is 65. Standard deviation is 6. Each train had 5 engines, and the engines were not included in the count. What would the report be if the engines had been included in her count? So is she multiplying by something or adding something? So what happens when you add something? What gets bigger? The mean gets bigger. We're going to add 5 to the mean because all it's doing is adding 5 from your smallest amount to your largest amount. Okay? And then that ends up equaling what? 70. When you add, it's just shifting it, right? So is your standard deviation changing? No. So that means that my answer is mean equals 70, and my standard deviation still is 6. Okay, are we okay with that? All right, next one, 15 says find the variance. Can somebody briefly tell me what do I do in order to find the variance?
Add them all, get the mean, and
So get the mean, then
then
subtract each of them from the mean, and
Square
then
each one,
square them,
and then find the average.
and then find the average.
And then find
And that's your, once you find that, that's your variance, right? And then from the variance, then for the standard deviation, you would square root. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is find the mean of this data. So we add those up. 9 plus 3 plus 7 plus 12 equals
40.
31. And 31 divided by 4 is 7.75. From there, I'm going to take all of my original set of data and I'm going to subtract 7.75. So my 9 minus 7.75 equals 1.25. 3 minus 7.75 equals negative 4.75. 7 minus 7.75 equals negative 0.75. And 12 minus 7.75 equals 4.25.
And then you square each one.
Very good. So next thing I'm going to do is go through and just square each of these numbers. So when I do that, 1.25 squared is 1.56. Negative 4.75 squared is 22.56. Negative 0.75 squared is 0.56. And 4.25 squared is 18.1. Okay, now I add all those up together. So when I add all those up, it ends up equaling 42.75. And we divide that number by what? 4. Don't forget that once you add them up, you're dividing, because I think a lot of you forgot that on your quiz. So we take that, we divide by 4, and that equals 10.7. That is my variance, 10.7. Okay, questions? All right. 16, it says consider the two sets of data. So you have two sets of data there. Okay? it talks about the means and the standard deviations. So you know what I think you probably need to do? Is do the work for both of them before you even start the problem. Like, take this set of data and go all the way to your standard deviation. There's only 3 numbers. Does it take a little bit of time? Yes. But if you do the work, you're going to get the answer correct. Okay? So, if we I'm just going to do, this is number 1. Okay? Over here. So, the first thing I'm going to do is just take the mean. I'm going to do that right here. 1 plus 3 is 4. 4 plus 11 is 15. And we go 15 divided by 3, which is 5. So, my mean is 5. Okay? Mean equals 5. Okay, we also are going to want to know our standard deviation, so I'm going to write that right there, but I have to go through all that work to find it. So what do I do in order to find the standard deviation? First subtract. Good. So 1 minus 5 is negative 4. 3 minus 5 is negative 2, and 11 minus 5 is 6. Then I square those. Negative 4 squared is 16, negative 2 squared is 4, and 6 squared is 36. Now I add those all up together, and we end up getting 56. And 56 divided by 3 is 18.7. Is that my standard deviation? No. What do I do to find the standard deviation? Square root it. When we take the square root of 18.7, it equals about 4.3 when you round it to the nearest tenth, and they said to round it to the nearest tenth. Okay, so up here, my standard deviation is 4.3. And honestly, did that really take that much time? No. And you guys can use calculators, so it makes it really easy. Okay, so now I'm going to do set number 2 over here. Yes, question?
On the one you squared out, why didn't you square root 2.7?
Because it asks for the variance. So the variance is the number before you square root it. Okay? Okay, so back to number 16. So we're going to add all these up. 4 plus 6 is 10. 10 plus 8 is 18. And then 18 divided by 3 is 6. Okay, so over here we're going to write mean equals 6 and standard deviation equals, and we have to figure that out. So we go 4 minus 6, which is negative 2. 6 minus 6 is 0, and then 8 minus 6 is 2. We square each of these. I get 4, 0, 4. We add all those up, and that equals 8. 8 divided by 3 is 2 point, I have it as 2.6. Do you guys think it's 2.6 or 2.7?
I did not.
8 divided by 3. 2.7?
I got 2.7.
Okay, 2.7, and then square root of 2.7 is what? 1.6. Okay. All right, so my standard deviation is 1.6. Okay, so looking at these, the means are different and
The standard deviation.
both of them are different. The two sets have different means and different standard deviations. That's it. Okay, and you could read through, but we know that's the correct answer. What? Right, and you could have looked at some of the answers and crossed stuff out before we got the standard deviations and stuff, but I think just knowing what you have and then looking through is maybe a little bit easier. Okay, state the steps needed to calculate the standard deviation of a set of data. Actually, it's basically, you should have said state the last step needed to calculate the standard deviation, and what is that? The square root of the variance. All right. Okay, last one, number 18. It says that using 78 as the approximate mean of this set of data, find the variance to the nearest tenth. So they're telling you use this as the mean. Okay, so what am I going to do now? Good. 85 minus 78 is 7. 72 minus 78 is
6.
negative 6. 76 minus 78 is negative 2. We square each of these. 7 squared is 49. Negative 6 squared is 36. And negative 2 squared is 4. We add all of those up together.
And we divide it by 3.
And when you add them up, it equals 89. And 89 divided by 3 is 29 point what? 7. And is that my answer? Yes. Because when I take the square root of it, that is finding the what? So make sure you don't take the square root. If it's asking for the variance, that means you just take your average and that's it. That's your answer.